Throughout most of the Kirk Cousins era of the Vikings, basically everything after John DeFilippo, there has been this problem plaguing the offense. It hasn't sunk it. There's been good offense, but there's been this one thing that nobody's been able to solve. And I think the Vikings might have taken a really, really, really big step toward finally cracking that nut. We'll talk about that and a whole bunch more stuff here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Ooh-wee! You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been there for more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings the first listen of the day. I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL, and the show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Today we are talking a little bit. There's some news and notes we got to go over from the week, but also we're going to talk about the tape, and in particular, I want to talk about bootlegs. But we'll also go over some scattered thoughts about everybody that I noticed on watching the tape from Vikings Panthers. And then we enter bye week mode a little bit. But first, the news of the day is that Kene Nwangwu has been activated off of IR. Of course, he hyperextended his knee, the very first kickoff of his very first preseason game. And apparently he was slated to get quite a bit of work in that game. And I think what the Vikings were toying with is something they actually did, which is giving him a roster spot over Ameer Abdullah. Ameer Abdullah has now been cut. I believe he's only been activated once from the practice squad, so they could still dress him for a game. And if there's any COVID issues, like with Dalvin Cook or Alexander Madison, they get extra elevations for Ameer Abdullah. So he probably ends up on the practice squad and remains good depth, assuming somebody else doesn't roster him, poach him away from us. But for now, we get Kene Nwangwu back, which is awesome. I mean, he adds this whole element of speed. I think the Vikings were pretty excited about him. I was excited about him when I was watching him in camp. I thought he was doing some pretty cool stuff. I thought he read the field better than I kind of thought he would after kind of based on his draft scouting report and stuff. So I'm excited to see what the kid can do, though. I mean, he hasn't had all that much practice, so I don't know if that happens immediately or anything like that. Not unlike Christian Darrisaw. It's going to take a few weeks probably for him to get going, but once he does, should be pretty exciting. Can't wait for that day to come. But what I really want to talk about is I want to talk about bootlegs. So for this, I'm going to go to the whiteboard on YouTube, the stupid Photoshop document where I draw stuff out, but I'll be descriptive enough, so don't worry about it if you can't watch on YouTube if you're in your car or whatever. So I want you to visualize a classic bootleg, which with every offensive lineman kind of zone blocking, and then the quarterback sort of rolls the other way, and every receiver runs a route that goes with the quarterback. And the quarterback is usually rolling toward what is called the weak side of the formation. If you're unfamiliar, that just means the side where the tight end is not. Usually when the tight end lines up somewhere, that becomes the strong side, and it kind of tells the defense where to align and stuff. So that means that, they're going to put more defenders where you have more guys. So they're going to put more defenders over by the tight end. And so you do a bootleg over to the other side. And the idea is that you can leave a player unblocked, right? So that's usually what I call the backside defensive end. The guy who usually would be kind of crashing in and pursuing from the backside of the play to try to get a tackle, take away the cutback lane or whatever. And if he does that, then the quarterback can, safely roll out. There'll be nobody there. There'll be no way to get pressure. Great way if you have an offensive line that's struggling or anything like that to get rid of pressure, get deep shots. So this becomes a problem when the defense doesn't play along. And instead of sending that backside defensive end in pursuit, they send that guy directly upfield. And if it is a handoff, then you kind of get punished because the running back can go cut back in a way, the defensive end can't take away the cutback lane as easily. But you figured that's worth it, right? If you can just win most of your run plays with, down a guy, that's not that impossible to do. You can take away all those really good bootlegs and stuff. And solving this problem has been a huge problem for the Vikings. So here's a bunch of solutions that they have tried. For one, they have tried simply taking advantage of that run advantage, but then that leads to offenses where you run too much and offense. And if the run game fails for a different reason, then, you have like all these issues, right? So you still have to find a way to get that passing game in situations where your run game's getting killed for a different reason. They have tried sending the running back on a little flat route so that if the defensive end is right in the quarterback's face, then the quarterback can just throw it right over him, and it kind of puts that defensive end in conflict. Do you rush the quarterback, or do you go back off and cover the running back? And the running back's usual cover man, the guy who's usually responsible for that person, is ostensibly getting sucked up into the play action. That can work for a little bit, but what happens when that last part is no longer true, where the defensive end is still crashing for the quarterback, and then somebody else can safely be responsible for the running back, and then you end up having to either throw it at the guy's ankles, or you throw really dangerous passes, or complete for loss of 2, all kinds of problems. So then they started to try and chip that guy with, say, a tight end leaking across the formation, or have the running back chip that guy. They tried this a bunch last week against the Lions, where the defense would come up, and as the defensive end was nailing that quarterback and running right at him, you would also have a tight end or somebody coming across the formation and running a route, and you would hopefully have a collision between those two guys that keeps the defensive end off the quarterback for a little bit and gives him a little bit more time. And that didn't work all that well because A, that's a really difficult chipping assignment, and B, it kind of ruins that guy's route, so you're ruining parts of the concept, and that didn't work that well either. So that brings us to this week, which is, what did the Vikings do against the Carolina Panthers to kind of get this back? And the answer was, I think, simple and very clever, which was they flipped the thing around, and they started play actioning to the weak side. So instead of rolling the quarterback out toward where the bodies aren't, it sounds counterintuitive, but they started rolling him to where the bodies are, which then makes it so the strong side defensive end is the guy who has to nail the bootleg if the bootleg is coming. But what's nice about that is there's a tight end right in front of that guy because it's the strong side. It's where he lined up. Or sometimes that's a linebacker or a safety or whoever's responsible for it. So you kind of buy yourself a blocker that way. Obviously, you can't send that guy out on a real route, but that's a pretty small price to pay. And then guys can run all sorts of deep things across the formation. You can run all sorts of things that stress safeties. You can get really cute down the field. And that especially comes in handy in endgame situations like overtime where you need a touchdown to win the game. Off the top of my head, I think there were 4 of those, like kind of strong side bootlegs that worked out really well with a blocker in front, and Kirk Cousins got a lot of deep shots. I think 3 of them went for huge plays, and one was a missed would-be touchdown, but Kirk didn't throw it very well. So that was that. There are other scattered offensive thoughts. I want to talk about the offensive line. I want to talk about Wyatt Davis, Oli Udoh, and I want to talk about the defense too. But first, I want to talk to you about gas prices. Doesn't it suck that they always go up? How about them gas prices? If you want to save a little bit of money at the pump, and who doesn't want to save money at the pump, get the Get Upside app. It's a free app. You can get it at the iTunes Store or Google Play. It can save you up to $0.25 a gallon. 25 cents a gallon at the pump just for going to the free app and downloading Get Upside. And you can cash out however you want. There's no tricks or any deception going on here. You can just cash out and PayPal, direct deposit into a bank account. You can even do Amazon gift cards if you want. And you can cash out whenever, however. Again, that is a free app at the Google Play or iTunes Store. And if you enter promo code TOUCHDOWN, you can get an additional 25 cents off at the pump. That's 50 cents off at the pump on your first tank just for using promo code TOUCHDOWN. And all these savings can add up. If you drive a lot, that's $200-300 a month. So head on over to the App Store, get the Get Upside app for free, and use promo code TOUCHDOWN for up to 50 cents off per gallon. So the bootleg thing is really cool, but that's only 4 plays, right? What else happened all over the offense? Some quick thoughts about everything, not offensive line, but I want to talk a lot about the offensive line. Kirk, good, actually. Played pretty well. Turns out that a 3 touchdown, 350-yard game is a good game. So more specifically, I thought he read the plays really well. I think in general, this was a hell of a coaching performance, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We'll get to that. But I thought, Kirk really knew what he was looking at. I think in that offensive lull, I thought he made a bunch of reads that were way too conservative. And just something snapped in the players. I don't think anything particularly changed with the play calling that like sparked some big change. I think they just stayed the course and started executing better. And I think if they started executing better, if you ask, I want to say it was Adam Thielen. I think it was a Chad Graff article at The Athletic that detailed that like after that blocked punt that was returned for a touchdown for the Vikings to go down 12-17, that sort of woke the offense up. And I think you could kind of see that in Kirk Cousins. He started playing a little bit more aggressively. He started seeing the field a little bit better. I think they were on autopilot a little bit, and they needed that little kick in the butt. Momentum can be a fickle thing, right? But coming off the game, I thought it was an okay game for Kirk Cousins. I now think it's just a good game, like no qualifiers. Just he did well. Good job. Dalvin Cook, of course, he's good. Didn't look like he was 100%. There was a play at the end of overtime. You probably remember there was a run play. He almost housed. I think a fully healthy Dalvin does end the game right there. He didn't quite get around the safety. Fully healthy Dalvin does. I think we've seen him get around that safety before when he gets into that second level. And there's just, him and a single high safety is all there is for a touchdown. He has destroyed that guy in the past. I just don't think he's 100%. We'll see though. Bye week's going to go a long way. I thought Klint called a good game on the whole. I think that bootleg thing was really, really smart, but I also just think the play designs were really cute. And I think the way that they deceived, the way that they attacked that tilt nose problem from, going heavy, which is what I recommended, but also, just the way that they organized their double teams, the way that they organized their run game was really, really good. And that's cool because that tilted nose problem, and if you want to hear more about that problem, you can go listen to the Friday preview show where I did the same whiteboard thing and talked a little X's and O's there. But basically the problem is that if you align the nose tackle in a way that gives him a head start against certain reach blocks, it gets harder to reach block him, and then that breaks a bunch of zone plays. And I think they did a really good job of preventing that in just the design of the plays and just being aware of that problem. Cleveland killed them with this, and then they solved it 2 weeks later. I think that is a really, really, really good sign for your offensive coordinator. But let's talk about the O-line. Obviously, there's two big stories on the O-line. One of them is the Darisaw debut, and the other one is Oli Udoh, right? But let's talk about the other three first. Just get them out of the way. I thought, Brian O'Neill had a sneaky bad game. I'm pretty sure PFF doesn't agree with me. I think they graded him out okay. He got killed a lot. And it happens. It's, it's not a reason to be concerned or anything like that. It's not like he's falling off and suddenly he's going to be terrible forever. This week is not every week. But I don't know. He got his butt kicked. Got to go back to the drawing board and figure out some things. I think he struggled with power in the run game a lot. He got kind of blown back into the backfield a lot, and I think he just lost too many pass pro reps. Though those pass pro reps didn't exactly count as pressures. I don't even know if PFF downgraded them as much as I would, because for process versus results reasons. But I don't know. I think Cousins got the ball out quickly, and they helped their tackles a lot schematically with shallow dropbacks and stuff, which is really helpful. But Brian O'Neill, I don't know. Darisaw looked like the better tackle, which I guess says a lot. Darisaw wasn't perfect, but we'll get to that. The other two guys that aren't really in the headlines, Garrett Bradberry had one hideously ugly miss, and I thought was solid for the rest of the game, so don't let that one miss define his game. And I thought Ezra Cleveland, I don't know, he's really subtly bad in ways that is not getting captured by any of the win rate. He was top 10 in the league in pass block win rate. Which I guess because the ball got out fast, none of that stuff matters. But I don't know. I still see problems with him. We'll cover it in detail more at a later date when that stuff manifests in a more visible way. But for now, I don't know. It feels like there's problems there we have to address. But let's talk about Darisaw. So Darisaw, I thought he had a pretty good debut. It was not perfect. It was fine. And fine for a rookie debut is great. I thought he still made some mistakes. I thought Brian Burns got his goat a couple times. It's Brian Burns. He's going to do that. So, when your rookie debut is against a guy like that, I think that he performed admirably under those circumstances, but Brian Burns did set him up a little bit. I thought he had some trouble dropping with depth when he needed to drop with depth. A lot of times he didn't need to drop with depth, and that helps. But when he did need to get some depth on a kick slide, I thought he wasn't very good at that. I thought he showed some inconsistent mobility in the run game, I guess. Wanted to see him kind of get to the second level a little bit faster a lot of the time, but he's such a weird player to watch. He will knock guys out of the play with just a punch sometimes. And it's insane. I've never seen anything like that before, where he will just, it looks like he's a bouncer throwing a guy out of a club. He just pushes them and then they fall down. He's starting a fight in the lunchroom. He has so much strength and he has a lot of sand in his pants. Hassan Reddick, 275-pound pass rusher, total quickness guy. And when he would try to set up a bull rush or a speed to power or something like that, or get a running start and get a bull rush in just to push Darisaw back, it just went nowhere. And that's really, really awesome. So some ups, some downs for Darisaw. Like, I think there's still some improvement to be had. There's still definitely room to improve, but it was his rookie debut. So hopefully you see him realize those improvements. Oli Udoh. Okay, so Oli Udoh has two major problems for me, but outside of those, I thought he showed a lot of power. I thought he showed a lot of anchor. He's a very, very strong guard, and that's very good, and you can use that. He was washing dudes down the river a lot in the run game. But he has two major problems. One is this covered, uncovered thing. And we've been talking about this for a week or two now, where it's hard for him to figure out who he's supposed to block when the linebackers are shifting around in the run game. So when the linebackers shift back and forth, Oli Udoh makes mistakes a lot and does not block guys he's supposed to block. That is something that defenses can exploit and take advantage of, and it's a really big problem. You got to work that out. But that's as much as, just studying it really hard over the bye week. That's not a total killer. The other thing is he has a very, very, very nasty habit, and I'm worried about this habit. It led to penalties. He got 2 holding penalties on a false start, I think, in this game, where when he is, shooting out to the second level, when it's time to go block a linebacker, that linebacker, there are some times where you have no chance to get him. If that linebacker, flows really well with the play, if they read it, if they go and attack, if they're assigned to a gap that's too far away from you or whatever, there are some times where you're never going to get that guy. And when Oli Udoh gets to that guy, but not, around that guy, doesn't make the block the way he's supposed to, he has a really bad habit of lurching his arm out and holding and trying to, hook that guy. And I'm sure somewhere along the line in his career, he was coached to do that, because he's a big lumbering player, and hey, if you get close to him, see if you can't get away with a hook on him, because those little hooks go uncalled often enough to make that worth the risk. But he goes to that well way, way, way too often, and it turns into a 10-yard penalty way too often, and that puts the Vikings behind the chains. And a lot of the second quarter woes, and early third quarter woes, like a lot of those drives were killed by those holding penalties, and then that kills the whole quarter because that was your only drive of the quarter and stuff. So that snowballing effect is really, really worrisome, and I definitely want to see Oli Udoh clean up, block who you're supposed to block and don't hold, and I think you've got yourself a guard. Like, he's not that far away from being a good guard. And so when you bring up the Wyatt Davis conversation, look, whoever's going to hold less and whoever blocks who they're supposed to block more often, that guy goes in. If that's not Wyatt Davis because he's a rookie, that's totally understandable. But I've made the joke, sit him down at the bye week and, sit both these guys in a room and quiz them on who you're supposed to block in what situation. All right, here's the alignment. Here's the rules. Here's the protection. Who are you blocking? And, whoever does better on the quiz gets the job. But I don't know. I am ready to see Wyatt Davis. I would love to see Wyatt Davis, but I don't think Oli Udoh is beyond reclamation. I think those problems feel kind of fixable. If you can just get the game to slow down for him a little bit and get him thinking a little smarter, playing a little smarter, he has all the physical tools in the world to do so. I still want to talk some about the defense, but first, this episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's is more than just a restaurant where things are tasty and affordable. McDonald's can be a place to hang. And we all remember high school. You go drop by Mickey D's, get a little food. It's a road trip rest stop, right? You drive for 6 hours, you stretch your legs, get a McFlurry for the road and have a little fun, right? It's so much more than just a fast food joint. So head on down to your local McDonald's, refuel, reconnect. And a thank you so much to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. Now, let's say it's not a cheat day, but you still want to feel like you're cheating. Maybe check out Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar, but it tastes like a candy bar, all covered in 100% chocolate. Perfect for those cravings, but it's got 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of carbs. So it's not going to knock you off the wagon. It's even keto friendly if you're doing that. And it comes in 9 delicious main series flavors like chocolate orange, chocolate cherry, coconut almond, all sorts of delicious stuff. So head to built.com. They even have some limited edition flavors there as well. So keep an eye out. Sometimes they do, seasonal promotions. They got a Halloween thing going on right now. So check that out. And whatever you buy, I like the sampler, which is 2 of each of their 9 main series flavors. You can enter promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you can get 15% off of your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15, all one word, at built.com. So when I was watching the defensive tape, the thing that really stuck out to me was Dalvin Tomlinson. He was an absolute beast in this game. The whole defensive line did well, including the rotational guys. I thought James Lynch had a sneaky good game. Armon Watts had a less sneaky good game. I thought Sheldon Richardson did very, very well. He did a lot of penetrating, and then somebody else got the tackle, which is kind of the point of him. So, we got our dividends from that. But outside of Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter, who are the guys who made the flashy plays, and we know about those guys, Dalvin Tomlinson was a beast. He just causes problems, and that's such a good thing. He had times where he would, he would defeat his blocks so well that it would ruin the gap on either side of him. And famously, the Vikings do not two-gap, according to Andre Patterson. I think he might have been lying to us about that because it sure looks like guys are two-gapping. But he says, guys do not cover two gaps. Or maybe linebackers cover two gaps, which is usually the way the Vikings would play it back when they had like Shamar Stephen and stuff. So maybe that's still the case, but Dalvin Tomlinson sure found a way to destroy two gaps, and sometimes Sheldon Richardson would penetrate, and that gets rid of three gaps because he can't cut into any of those because there's a guy in the backfield. And I think that led to a really, really good defensive performance. Not to mention Barr and Kendricks. Those guys are still very good. I thought Kendricks did have some downs. He got washed out of some plays a little bit, just not quite physical enough to stack and shed those offensive linemen. Kind of always been a drawback of his game, and I think that's just who he is. That's fine. Barr got washed out once or maybe twice, but ultimately, still looked like a very strong linebacker, and I thought he made a lot of plays. He did a lot of other, just kind of holding his gap, forcing cutbacks, forcing guys to, bounce outside where a safety could come in and fill. I thought Anthony Barr had a really good game. And like I mentioned on Monday, those guys were reading just everything. And there was just no end to, it just seemed like they really, really knew what the Panthers ran. And Patrick Peterson was very, very good. I know he didn't get a great PFF grade, but I don't know. It seems like they will ding someone for giving up one big catch, even if they play like an all-pro for the rest of the game. And I just don't agree with that. Breland, obviously, he had his best game, and I thought Dantzler was okay, we'll go with. The thing about this game, though, on defense, and I really, really liked the way that the Vikings prepared and responded to some of the defensive woes that they had in the early parts of the year. They were extremely prepared to play against these Panthers. They had these Panthers figured out. And the Panthers are in a really rough spot. They have a struggling interior offensive line and a quarterback that is particularly poor against pressure. It's a familiar quandary, right? We know what that's like. So what they're doing to protect Sam Darnold right now is a lot of RPOs, a lot of run pass options, a lot of quick timing based stuff, a lot of, kind of trying to get gimmies. And that's a really good way. Whenever I scout a team, one of the first questions I always ask is, what's your gimme? What's your, favorite play to get, 5 yards when you need 5 yards? For the Vikings, I think right now that's slant flat, or curl flat, or, triangle read kind of inside-outside progressions versus cover three. Like, that's their gimme play. The play that will always be there, that will always get you, a clean 6 yards. You can't make an offense out of only that. Eventually, you'll need to get an explosive, but you can consistently rely on that to kind of be your filler. What's that? And for the Panthers, that is RPO. That is a run-pass option with that usually is designed to stress one of those two linebackers, Barr or Kendricks. Very similar to the stuff that those guys struggled so much with in the 2017 NFC Championship game. We are a long way past that. They're a little better at them now. And I don't know if there was a tell that they understood, but what I really think is that the way the Vikings constructed their coverages and their run defenses, when you have a defensive call, you need to call both the coverage, and when you're in that coverage, you need a run defense stapled to it. They did a really good job of preventing conflicts between those two things. Whether it's run or pass, my first two steps are inside. I'll go 2 steps inside, and then by then it's usually declared whether or not it's a run or a pass. The team's got to show its hand eventually. And by then, you can read it a little bit better. And the Vikings almost got a couple interceptions off of that. Their blitz designs were awesome. I actually wrote a whole article about their blitz designs at Zone Coverage, which you can go check out there. Should be on the front page on Wednesday if you want to check that out. It was a really, really good defensive coaching performance. And that, I think it was just overall a really well-coached game for a staff on the hot seat. That's really good to see. Even though I don't think the Panthers are that good. I don't know. The Panthers defense is a good defense, and putting up 570 on them was fantastic. But the Panthers offense, obviously, kicking their butt will only get you so far, but I think it was a very well-coached game. Mike Zimmer kicked Joe Brady's ass. You can take that to the bank. And I think that's a really big thing. I talked a lot about, what taste is going to be in their mouth when they head into the bye week. Well, out-coaching the hell out of another NFL team that'll feel pretty good in the bye week, and I think it really goes a long way towards cooling that seat down. So we're in the bye week now, so we don't have a crossover Thursday tomorrow. We don't have, the usual bold prediction and all that stuff. So we'll do some stuff. Show is still going. Don't get me wrong. We are still doing them. So now we're in the bye week. So we get to kind of use this time to talk about some stuff that we otherwise wouldn't have time to talk about. I might do something on Alexander Mattison and Dalvin Cook, the running backs. I might do something on blitzes, might do something on some more offensive line stuff. I don't know. We'll see whatever comes to me. But in the meantime, thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Make the Peacock and Williamson podcast your second listen of the day. They are doing the daily thing just like this show, but they're doing it from the national perspective. Brian Peacock, he does Locked On 49ers as well. And Matt Williamson, who was a scout in the NFL, breaking everything down from the national angle. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.